Nice guys.
Oh, that's a wrap? Right. Anyways, wait, I got one for Smo. It ain't a wrap, dog. Relax. UFC. What's up, Smo?
I gotta ask you this. You stopped the guy with the 8-fight win streak. Do you feel like Sean Strickland did enough to get the next title shot in the middleweight division?
Yes, I did. I don't think this thing works. I'll stand up. Yes, Judge, enough. Listen, you don't want to see any of these fight that little Chechen war. You want to see the last fucking American in the sport going fuck that guy up, and that's what's gonna happen.
What did Sean Strickland do to beat Khamzat Chimaev?
Anything I fucking want, dude. Anything I fucking want, dude. I'll bring a fucking show. You'll get distracted. Anything I fucking want. I feel like we need to bring the belt back to America. We need a real fucking American to represent this fucking organization.
So, a fight with Khamzat at some point somewhere in the world over fighting at the White House?
Well, first of all, guys, I'm not leaving this country ever again. I'm an American. I'm not leaving. I'm not traveling. I'm not vacationing. I'm going to die on this fucking soil. So it will be in America. Where the fuck that is, I'll be there. What do you want next, Sean? I don't know, man. Chimaev finally gets off the bench, dude. I'd like a piece of that little Chechen whore. But you never know with him, bro. You never know that guy, but that's what I want. I kind of thought you started going a little wild. And like, no part of you slowing down. But to me, you're getting a little bit more sloppy. But like, no part of this man was slowing down. He was a fucking savage.
Well, Tony, just a second, Fluffy. Option with that win. Fluffy just won 8 in a row. You stopped him. You're a former champion. What do you want next year?
Alright, so the energy before this fight felt different, almost unsettling. No trash talk, no screaming face-offs, no cheap theatrics to distract anyone, just silence, and beneath it, something sharp waiting to snap. Sean Strickland had vanished behind closed doors, grinding in the shadows, stacking brutal round after brutal round, fully aware he was marching straight into a gritty, unforgiving collision with Anthony Hernandez. And here's what made it dangerous. Nobody truly knew what he was preparing for. The entire MMA world could feel it, like pressure building inside a sealed chamber. Analysts were divided, almost tense themselves. Would Strickland's suffocating forward pressure finally crack Fluffy, or was this the night Hernandez's relentless, smothering grappling dragged a former champion into deep water with no escape? Every prediction felt confident, until you listened closer and heard the hesitation. This wasn't just another matchup tucked quietly onto a fight card. It was transforming in real time into something heavier, something that carried consequences beyond rankings and headlines. For both men, this was the line. Cross it and everything changes. Stumble and the narrative flips instantly. A true make-or-break moment, a kind that doesn't just test skill but exposes what's left when the noise fades. And as the cage door loomed closer, one question kept echoing: who was about to prove everyone wrong?
Sean Strickland!
When Sean Strickland really sat down and dissected Anthony Hernandez's resume, he didn't just see a highlight reel of dominant wins stacking up neatly. No, he saw patterns, and patterns can hide secrets. In Strickland's battle-hardened mind, those suffocating performances weren't just displays of skill, they were puzzles with missing pieces. Yes, Hernandez had built his name by overwhelming opponents, drowning them under relentless pressure. But here's where it twisted. Not every suffocation was as clean as it looked once the lights dimmed. On paper, it screamed dominance. Behind the curtain, it whispered something else. Strickland was convinced there were variables the public never caught. Opponents limping into camp with injuries they never disclosed, fractured training camps sabotaged by chaos, fighters accepting the walk knowing they weren't anywhere near full capacity, details buried beneath post-fight bonuses and roaring crowds. So when Hernandez would storm forward and smother another name on the roster, fans reacted with shock, commentators scrambled for superlatives, but Strickland, he stayed calm, almost knowing, because to him, the outcome wasn't magic, it was math. He believed he could see the cracks others ignored, the subtle shifts in momentum that explained everything, and that belief changed the stakes entirely. If Hernandez's dominance had hidden conditions attached, what would happen the moment those conditions disappeared? That was the question Strickland kept to himself, and the one nobody else seemed ready to ask.
How do you know that about this guy? Like, when do you know that about a fight?
I mean, that's how he's made his career, just like laying on guys, you know. But it's hard. Like, he fought Roman Dolidze. And I mean, Roman Dolidze did his camp for us. He had his, like, again, talk about injuries. He hurt his back. He didn't even train really at all that fight camp. So, like, you know, Fluffy goes in there and mauls him, and everyone's like, oh shit. And you're like, me, has been in with Roman Dolidze for 10 weeks. I'm like, this guy didn't train at all. Like, he couldn't. His back was. But, you know, Roman had the idea that I'm just going to go in there, I got good jiu-jitsu, and I'm going to armbar somebody, and then lights come on, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So there is, like, it's kind of weird from insight, from knowing guys he fought like Roman, where you're like, well, I know you felt like a badass, but like you should have seen what we've seen for the last 8 weeks. You would have been like.
For Sean Strickland, the thought of dragging himself through a savage 4th or even a desperate 5th round wasn't something that sparked fear. It sparked recognition. That was home. That was where his fights actually began. Deep waters weren't a nightmare scenario. They were the natural rhythm of his entire career. The steady pulse he trusted when everything else broke down. 5-round wars didn't intimidate him. They reassured him. But preparing specifically for Anthony Hernandez shifted the equation in a way Strickland openly acknowledged. He admitted it without ego. Hernandez's pace wasn't normal. It wasn't something you casually mirror in a standard gym session or simulate with a single hard round. It was a suffocating, mechanical pressure that kept climbing when most fighters leveled off. So Strickland did something drastic. He overloaded the system. He cycled through fresh bodies relentlessly, pushing each training partner to the brink, forcing exchanges at a savage tempo until they physically collapsed from exhaustion, then immediately calling in the next man to restart the storm. No breaks, no soft resets, just constant attrition. He wanted chaos. He wanted fatigue. He wanted that creeping burn in the lungs that makes lesser fighters unravel. Because if this fight drifted into those suffocating later rounds, if momentum twisted and the air grew thin, that wasn't disaster. It was opportunity. That was the territory where he believed instincts sharpened and doubt disappeared. And if things truly went south, that's exactly where he intended to thrive.
That was a layup.
You still, how do you feel about going into those 4th and 5th rounds knowing that it's going to be miserable? You welcome that, or you just like,
yeah,
I'll do it, I have to do it?
Yeah,
but like,
I mean, I don't know anything else in 5 rounds. Like, you just train for that, you know? Like, we did 5 rounds in here. I mean, you've seen 5 rounds in here, and then generally I tried. You're like Fluffy's a hard guy to train for because there's nobody that really fights like him, you know, that like has that pace. So a lot of my training is like my wrestling rounds are outside of sparring. I'll go and I'll get guys. But I mean, you see me spar today, you know, you just like go with a guy until he becomes a dead.
But if Sean Strickland believed the suffering of deep waters would eventually bend in his favor, Anthony Hernandez was staring at something far wider than one brutal night. To him, this wasn't a dramatic, once-in-a-lifetime spotlight dangling over a make-or-break edge. It was a calculated checkpoint, just another deliberate brick laid into what he viewed as a slow, controlled ascent. While others framed the fight as high-stakes chaos, Hernandez treated it like disciplined math. He never ranked opponents by hype, noise, or viral headlines. He measured them by progress, cold, tangible advancement toward a single destination. The belt. Always the belt. Whether this victory would land him directly at the doorstep of a title shot or leave 1 or 2 final obstacles breathing in front of him didn't disturb his focus in the slightest. That uncertainty didn't rattle him, it clarified him. Because his mindset never shifted with circumstance. There were no emotional spikes, no desperate leaps for shortcuts, no reckless gambles to accelerate the timeline. Hernandez was prepared to methodically erase whoever stood in his lane, one name at a time, until the path to gold stopped being debated and started being obvious. And that's what made it unsettling. While others fought for validation, he fought for inevitability. The question wasn't whether he could rush the climb, it was how long anyone could delay what he believed was already coming.
Biggest fight of your entire life?
I think that every fight's as big as you make it, and like, you know what I mean? I'm not where I want to be. I still want to be higher, so I'm still chasing dreams and goals. So like, I don't know. I just look at it like another fight. I'm gonna go out there to prove myself again and try to knock on that door for the title.
Yeah, clearly with every step you take this step forward. Does this fight, Anthony, does this take you to the doorstep of a title fight? Obviously something that you have badly wanted for a long time.
Man, I really hope so. But if not, I mean, there's only 2 more people in front of me to take out. You know what I mean? So like I said, if I got to take every out, then I will. But I mean, then there's going to be no one to clear out the division. So I don't know. I just want the belt. I'll clear that out, and then we go from.
And through all of it, Hernandez carried that same steady, forward-driving composure into every training session and every microphone placed in front of him. He spoke about Sean Strickland with unmistakable respect, acknowledging him as a battle-tested former champion who had proven himself against elite opposition and, more critically, had thrived when the pressure was suffocating and the stakes were suffocatingly real. There was no denial of Strickland's resume, no attempt to rewrite history. But here's where Hernandez subtly shifted the narrative. He refused to live in it. What Strickland had had done before, who he had broken, the wars he had survived, none of those victories had come against him, and that distinction mattered. In Hernandez's mind, this wasn't a continuation of Strickland's legacy. It was a reset button, a clean slate. The past didn't carry forward into this cage unless he allowed it to, and he had no intention of allowing it to. He was determined to show that the version of Fluffy walking into this fight wasn't a familiar puzzle waiting to be solved, but a new equation entirely, sharper, more calculated, and dangerously unpredictable. The calm tone never cracked, but beneath it was certainty. He believed that once the door locked, respect would remain, but reputation would not.
See Sean as an opponent, obviously somebody who has won, massive fights, beaten the best of the best. He's been champion. Where do you see him? I mean, is he washed now? Is he still that same dangerous guy? What's this guy?
No, I think he's tough and he's really good. You know what I mean? He's beaten the fuck out of some great people, like you said, but all those people aren't me, so I'm looking to go in there and show what I can do against them.
Then the legendary Michael Bisping stepped in, and when he did, the chaos suddenly had structure. He dissected the matchup with cold precision, laying out a stark contrast between Sean Strickland and Anthony Hernandez that felt less like opinion and more like warning. Strickland, Bisping emphasized, brought relentless volume and unapologetic power, pushing a pace close to 6 significant strikes per minute with a noticeably higher knockout ratio. When he let his hands go, damage followed, but there was a shadow to that aggression. His accuracy wasn't airtight, and defensively he left windows cracked just wide enough for sharp counters to slip through. Hernandez, on the other hand, operated like a technician. He threw less, but wasted almost nothing. Cleaner entries, sharper timing, and critically, he absorbed far less punishment in return. Then came the number that shifted the room. Hernandez averaged roughly 6.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, a suffocating grappling rate that dwarfed Strickland's comparatively minimal attempts. That wasn't a small gap, it was a strategic canyon. And suddenly, this wasn't just a fight built on narrative tension. It became a stylistic collision drawn in hard data. Raw, forward-driving pressure, and knockout threat crashing headfirst into calculated precision and overwhelming wrestling control. The stats didn't predict an outcome, but they exposed the battlefield.
Now, let's have a look at some of the stats going into this one. The average fight length between the pair of these, Sean Strickland's average fight length, 16 minutes, Alexander Hernandez, 11 minutes, 20 seconds. Knockdown average per 15 minutes, 0.24 for Sean Strickland, 0.0 for Alexander Hernandez. So I think that points to the fact that Strickland hits harder. That's fair to say. Strikes landed per minute, Sean's the busier guy, 5.95 to 4.53 per minute for Hernandez. The striking accuracy, Hernandez is way more accurate. He lands at a 62.8% clip, whereas Sean Strickland lands 42.5%. Strikes absorbed per minute, Fluffy also has the better defense. He only gets hit 2.53 times per minute, where Strickland takes 4.57 shots. Striking defense 60% to 49% on Hernandez, and the striking differential plus 138 for Sean Strickland and plus 2.0. Now when it comes to the grappling, the takedown average per 15 minutes, 6.5 takedowns in a 15-minute fight.
But wait, when Bisping peeled back another layer of those grappling stats, the story twisted in ways most people didn't expect. Conventional wisdom painted Hernandez as the clear wrestling hammer, constantly shooting, constantly hunting control. And yes, he pursued takedowns relentlessly, but his completion rate hovered around 48%, solid yet far from unstoppable. Now flip the lens. Strickland, who rarely initiated wrestling exchanges, quietly converted his limited attempts at a far sharper 64% efficiency. That contrast alone forced a second look. And defensively, that's where the tension really tightened. Strickland stuffed an imposing 76.2% of takedown attempts thrown at him, a notably stronger wall compared to Hernandez's 68.2% defensive rate. Suddenly, the assumption of inevitable control didn't feel so inevitable. Then came the submission numbers, and again the narrative split. Hernandez averaged a dangerous 1.8 submission attempts per 15 minutes, a clear, active threat on the mat. Strickland, by comparison, barely registered at 0.16. On the surface, that gap looked decisive, but beneath it, another interpretation surfaced. Strickland wasn't chasing submissions, he was neutralizing positions, stabilizing chaos, and denying openings before they ever bloomed into danger. The numbers stopped being simple categories of offense versus defense. They became indicators of control versus pursuit, and that subtle distinction hinted at something bigger. If Hernandez couldn't secure dominant positions cleanly, would his grappling edge hold under resistance unlike anything he'd faced before?
Well, Sean Strickland, 0.73. The takedown accuracy, though, of Fluffy is only 48%. When Sean goes for a takedown, he's way more successful. He gets a takedown 64% of the time. That's because Fluffy goes for so many takedowns. The takedown defense, Sean is better there. He's got 76% 66.2%, with 68.2% on the side of Fluffy Hernandez. And then finally, submission attempts throughout a 15-minute period, 1.8 for Fluffy. I thought that would have been higher. It certainly looks like it, and Sean Strickland.
Now those same grappling numbers suddenly carried a darker, almost ominous undertone when a story slipped out of Khamzat Chimaev's notoriously sealed training camp. The rumor spread fast. A 21-year-old teammate allegedly snuck in a rear-naked choke on Strickland during a live sparring round, right in the middle of his preparation for Hernandez. If that account was true, and that if loomed large, it hinted at something far more unsettling than percentages on a stat sheet, because numbers don't show panic. They don't show split-second lapses. They don't show what happens when a neck is exposed for just a heartbeat too long. On paper, Strickland's takedown defense looked sturdy. His control metrics looked composed. But this suggested a crack that data couldn't measure. For Anthony Hernandez, this wasn't idle gym gossip to scroll past. It was a signal flare, a glimpse into the possibility that the seasoned, battle-hardened Strickland might not be as untouchable on the mat as many believed. And if that vulnerability was real, if even a fraction of it translated under the bright lights, it could offer Hernandez the exact leverage he needed. One clean entry, one scramble one back taken. From there, the fight's entire trajectory could tilt instantly. Not in the later rounds, not after a drawn-out war, but from the opening bell, where doubt spreads fastest and momentum changes everything.
What were you gonna say? Go ahead.
I want to say 1 week ago we were at PI and we go to extreme sparrings and these guys meet Sean Strickland.
Oh!
Hey!
How did you submit him?
Yeah.
We were sparring with Sean Strickland. He asked me and Baisangur. Baisangur went with him 3 rounds and he made him tired. And then he says, come on you. And I went to take him down and submit him.
On the other hand, the ever-provocative Chael Sonnen laid out a chilling scenario that went far beyond a simple win or loss. He argued that if Anthony Hernandez didn't just beat Strickland but systematically dismantled him, controlled him, broke his rhythm, dominated every phase, it wouldn't merely add another tally to his resume. It would redefine him. Sonnen wasn't talking about edging out rounds or sneaking a decision. He meant full control, the kind where one fighter dictates pace, position, and psychology, leaving the other reacting a step behind all night. Hernandez, in that vision, wouldn't be chasing validation. He would be manufacturing inevitability. And if a hardened former champion like Strickland were to be exposed in that unmistakable way, the fallout wouldn't be subtle. It would ripple through their division instantly. Fans would reassess. Fighters would recalibrate. The aura built through wars and pressure would suddenly look fragile. That's the kind of shift Sonnen was pointing to. A reputational fracture that numbers and rankings can't fully measure. In that dramatic outcome, Hernandez wouldn't just secure victory. He would seize narrative control of the entire weight class. He wouldn't be knocking on the door anymore. He'd be forcing it open, planting himself firmly in the title conversation as a legitimate, undeniable threat at the very top of the sport.